Hey, welcome back or welcome if you're new. My name is Luminous Ra. Today we are going to discuss my journey through femininity, wisdom, how I connected to the Most High, and basically how I have the point of view that I have. I got a comment a while ago on one of my videos asking, how did I come to gain a relationship with God? Were there any things in my life, any sermons or anything that helped me transition and becoming the person that I am today and having the wisdom that I have today? So I was like, that is a very deep, vulnerable story. My backstory is something that I don't often reflect on unless it's brought in by the Most High. So let's see what Spirit wants me to say on this topic. I have a roundabout idea of how I want to tackle this, but let's see, man. Let's see where we go. So I miss you guys. Let's go ahead and get into the discussion. I grew up in a household that was very much God centered. Even though my mom didn't go to church, she did have church instilled in her, Christianity beliefs instilled in her. My father is Muslim. So God has been a predominant conversation or predominant source in my life. What I experience, like many people experience, is not really understanding or knowing whether God is real. I remember when I was younger, maybe around 6 or 7, I mustered up the courage to ask if God is real and how do we know. And I remember getting scolded on that question that I'm never supposed to question whether God exists or not. I think the conversation around God, the Most High, Allah, whatever you reference, the being that is pulling all of the strings, right? Is people get really sensitive about it and they attack. What I realized in that moment is I'm not trying to dismiss that there is a God. My mind wasn't trying to go there. I was trying to connect with God. I was trying to find meaning in my life outside of everything that I was doing physically every day, because even at a young age I understood that there was something bigger and deeper than the things that we can experience with our five senses. And I just wanted to know how to feel God, how to feel connected, how to feel like there's something that has my back. And being shunned in that way, it made me go into like a recluse type of mentality within myself where I felt like I couldn't share my true authentic ideas with the world or ask questions because I would get scolded. Because I was really young and I was raised in a upper middle class household. My mom lived a very unconventional life. My parents were very well off while I was growing up, so I thought that everybody had the life that I had. I quickly realized that that wasn't the case. I wasn't aware of what other people had going on in their house, and I thought that everybody was pretty much experiencing my experience, which is so interesting with the knowledge that I have now looking back. On the outside, everything looked perfect. On the inside, there was a lot of trauma, a lot of abuse, a lot of damage, a lot of manipulation, a lot of things that I later on in life had to deprogram myself from and find myself and find my worth. I want to say around 11, 12, there was a huge shift in my life. I went from living with my mom and going to private schools to now having to switch and living with my sister and her two kids in the suburbs. We were basically transitioning from living in Chicago to moving to Jamaica, which was a whole nother shift within itself as well. So I did my seventh grade year in Jamaica. My mom had her own journey and her own story that she was living through. She was going through something, and I already asked her if I could share, but she's still thinking about it. So she was going through something. She was going through a cleanse, and moving to Jamaica was like her metamorphosis. It was like her phoenix rising basically to overcome her struggles and start over brand new. I went through a lot. That definitely shifted my beliefs and shifted how I saw the world, because I came from something that a lot of people, even in the States, weren't experiencing, to going to underdeveloped experiences. I don't want to say third world. In Jamaica, if you're poor, you're poor. There's no government assistance to help you, especially with us, because we were there, I guess you can say illegally. Like, girl, I was an illegal immigrant, but we were down there and we didn't do anything to become citizens. But going through that and being on the other side of the coin, I've experienced a lot of experiences where I'm on the other side of a lot of coins and I get to see things from everybody else's perspective. And then tying that to the curiosity that I had as a child, I was always curious, always asking questions. I always wanted to know. And I realized very quickly that adults don't know. So I had to do my own research and just trust myself that I did know certain things and I was often right. So that was cute and adorable at a young age. But when you become a teenager and you start questioning things, you get met with a lot of backlash. You're talking back, you're too smart for your own good, you're growing up too fast, so on and so forth. So you get hit with a lot of obstacles. When my mom discussed that she wanted to move back to Chicago, she informed me that I wasn't going to be able to live with her because she was going to have to start over and live with someone else. And the best person for me to go with was my father. Now, granted, I knew who my father was, but he wasn't in my life predominantly growing up. So, going from living with my sister, living with my mom in Jamaica, and then coming back and having to live with my dad and his wife and not knowing these people. He's my father, but I didn't know him enough to feel comfortable with him. My parents' marriage was very toxic, incredibly toxic from my standpoint, incredibly toxic. I feel like they had their beautiful moments, but at the same time, that is like the true definition of two unhealed people coming together for reasons that aren't deep and invested, and having a child because they feel the emotion or the essence of what they call love. Those things really make me think, even as a young child, how adults don't take things serious enough for me. So even though I'm silly, even though I'm goofy, even though I have this great bubbly personality, it reflects in some of my older content. I still take life very seriously. So I know when to relax and I know when to let go. And I think that transition came when I lived with my dad. Because with my mom, it was very free flowing. As long as I understood how to deal with her, I was good in her book. I didn't really have to do much and I got whatever I wanted, even if I didn't want it. But with my dad, it was less freedom on a whole nother level. I felt like I was going from one polar opposite to the next. I did not mention that my dad is Nigerian and Brazilian. My mom is African American with roots in Jamaica. There's a lot of ethnic, cultural differences at play, but also the strictness that I embodied with my dad. And then coming to him as a teenager, him not knowing me not knowing him having his wife who, I'm just going to be honest, she's passed away. She was very insecure about me. She was very insecure about my mom, and that showed. So, experiencing all of these things with adults and them not doing life right, in my opinion, made me go through a lot of personal introspection because I felt like I didn't want to grow up and be like that. I wondered what it was that they were lacking to lack, I guess, maturity. In that age range, I didn't think that it was maturity. I just felt that they just didn't know things and that they should know. And they didn't take on the responsibility to do what they needed to do. So I felt like it was my duty to do those things. It was my duty to hold myself accountable. It was my duty to find out the information that other people didn't know. So, in 3 years, I went through three major life changes. Well, actually, four. So, I moved to three different, completely different places and lived completely different lives in 3 years. And I also was going through puberty. All of that being mistreated in a sense of I wasn't allowed to have friends, I wasn't allowed to talk on the phone, I wasn't allowed to go outside. All I really had was the radio. There's like a 4 year gap of movies and entertainment that I did not experience. And I never forget when I got into my junior, senior year or in college when people would bring up movies from that time. And I had no idea what they were talking about. And they were like, I can't believe you didn't see that movie. And even that reminded me of the trauma that I experienced while living with my dad. The fact that I was kind of like alienated from the world and I wasn't able to do anything or eat what I wanted to eat or eat as much as I wanted to eat or just live a life where I felt okay, which put me into a deep depression. So later on down the line, while living with my dad, I ended up being admitted into the hospital and I was diagnosed with chronic depression. So it was deep, it was bad. I think the thing that sticks out the most to me, because a lot of times when I try to think back to that time, often I cry. And I think it's because I made it through those experiences, I made it through those moments, but those times were really numb. So I can't really pick up when it started, why it started, what really triggered it. I just feel like it was an entire buildup on my life. And I think that how I was being treated by adults around me was definitely something that triggered it. Now, when I decided that I was going to do this video and I knew that I was going to have to talk about depression and thoughts and activities that led to me wanting to unalive myself, I was like, what do I share about this? Because I want this to be a upbeat video. I want this to be something that people can take, something positive from. But that was just a really dark time, but that was a very transformational time for me as well because I used to feel like my safety, my security, my love, my guidance was supposed to come from my parents. And I was really close to my mom. She raised me in a way where I felt like I couldn't be with anybody but her. And then she kind of like ripped that apart and said, here, go live with this other person that I've talked about, I've demonized. Do you know what I mean? It was just completely messed up to me. Now, understanding the little that I understand about depression, I understand that it was basically me falling apart, me losing that program that I originally had with my mom. I was living carefree, I was enjoying life, I didn't have to worry about anything. It was more of a creative way of life, creative household, going with the flow, really not having any structure per se. And when I lived with my dad, there was a lot of structure forced upon me. So I think that in that essence, I developed balance and I was able to implement that into my later years. Now, I bring this up because this was a time where I really questioned God. This was a time where I thought that if there was a God, God hated me. And how could there be a God if I was going through and being treated and experiencing the things that I was experiencing? I experienced a lot, but I'm not going to get that's for the tell all book that I write later on in life. Like, it's just too much to even say in a video. But I definitely had moments where I didn't believe that I was God's favorite. I believed that I was God's least favorite. I didn't see the point in my life. I didn't see the point in my existence. I felt like no matter where I went, I was being abused or attacked, either verbally, physically. I grew up fighting, like getting into fights. People would fight me because of jealousy, so many different things. I was experiencing a lot. So I was like, there is no way that if God exists, that God cares about me. Like, I gotta be like the one that he dashed away because I did nothing to anybody. And for a matter of fact, if I remember well, before I even had all these transitions, when life was seemingly good, I was really into helping the planet. I was into helping the animals, people. I just wanted to help and love everybody. And thinking about that version of myself, like she was so beautiful. You know what I mean? She was so innocent and so naive. And I think that when I got to the state of depression, I was feeling like I don't want to help any of these people. There's no one on this earth that I want to help for real because why do I get treated the way I get treated? I always show up in love and light. I always show up strong. Nobody knows what I'm going through. I try to like tuck everything away and act like nothing's wrong. I just couldn't understand it. I was like, what is going on with life and why am I going through this in my life? I think that's where I developed a lot of victimhood mentality. I feel like it was already kind of there because even watching my mom now, I'm like, she's sending the wrong signal. She thinks she's being nice, but definitely giving people pleaser. I know that I picked those things up and I know that those are things that I had to get rid of. But I think at this time, I definitely was in victim mentality. And I carried that anger, I carried that rage from a majority of my life. And I was always in fight mode. I felt like a abused animal. If you ever seen like abused dogs, like they're either really scared or they'll bite you. Like they're gonna attack. That's how I was. Once I got my footing, I think in high school, I started to just say F everything. I was depressed, but I was like, F everything. I don't care about anything. And I'm just going to do whatever I want to do. Instead of being the villain, instead of being a troubled kid, I took a lot of that rage and anger and I fueled a life where I could get away from everybody, a life where I could live and be free and say, I made it. F you. I ended up getting two jobs in high school. I ended up being on varsity softball, cheerleading captain, sister to sister, yearbook committee, or whatever. Like I was in everything, honors, AP classes. I was putting all of my effort and energy to fight. And I used that energy to fight to get out of my depression as well. I realized that once you get to the bottom of depression, once you get to that dark, dark pit where the easy way out seems like to unalive yourself, if you ever get past that, you realize that you can overcome anything. If death is the thing that people are most afraid of in some way, shape, or form, and you're no longer scared of it, there's nothing in the world that will hold you back from what you're trying to do. So that mentality, that drive, that inkling, realizing that I only had my back. My parents said really mean, hurtful things to me when I was in the hospital and they found out I was depressed and they found out that I was suicidal. I don't even know if I can say that word on here. I might have to bleep it out. But when they found those things out, I was being attacked once again verbally. A part of me understood in my maturity that they were scared and they were trying to scare me out of going that direction, but that's not what I needed in that moment. I really needed to know that I had people behind me. I really needed to know that I was loved. I really needed to know that they cared about me and really give me a reason to believe in God, if that makes any sense. And since I didn't get that, something made me detach from them. I no longer relied on them. I no longer cared about them the way I used to. I no longer looked to them for sanctuary or advice or anything. That is when I grew up. Maybe my story is like reminiscent of yours or someone you know or someone you love. For some reason, today, right now, I'm grateful that I went through that. Of course, not in the moment. In the moment, it hurt like hell. But I'm grateful that I experienced it because I see adults now that are so attached to their parents and so attached to help that they're enabled. They are what I think the best description is emotionally stunted adults. They are trying to relive childhood, trying to hold on to something, trying to beg and plead to get this love, affection, and attention from their parents that they feel like they never got, or they're looking for that in someone else. And that's something that I don't exhibit or I don't see myself exhibit because I was already heartbroken a long time ago. I was already detached a long time ago. And once I did that, there was really nothing that my parents could tell me. I was still respectful. I still did what I needed to do, but their words never hit and hurt as much as they hurt and hit in that time because that's when I needed them the most. And that shaped and rewired my brain into believing that I don't need anybody because the only two people in this world that I would ever need didn't show up for me when I needed them. That added on a layer of armor, that added on a layer of hurt, that added on so much. And I started to get really good at holding and hiding and pushing down a lot of anger, resentment, anything that was hard, I wouldn't feel it. I wouldn't allow myself to feel it. I wouldn't pay attention to it. I was moving so fast trying to get away and run away that I wasn't able to feel for a really long time. It wasn't until I had my son that I wanted to get better. Actually, when I conceived my son, I understood how much responsibility that was. I understood that I did something that I wasn't prepared for. I never wanted kids, and I just felt like I didn't need to have any. I felt like I was too damaged to have children. I felt like I was too selfish to have children. I felt like once I made it in my life, I deserved to experience that alone because I felt like my entire life I hadn't experienced anything worthwhile. And why would I split my attention between myself and someone else that I have to now pour into and possibly mess up? I didn't want to mess up another person and put them out into the world and say, oh, well, I just had you because I thought babies were cute, or I just had you because I wanted to feel loved, or I just had you because I wanted to get a check. I didn't want to be that. I didn't want to experience that. I didn't want to fall into that. And I did not understand what motherhood was, but I knew I did not want to be a part of motherhood. And now I understand that everything that I've experienced in my life has been incredibly spiritual. When you remove spirit out of your purpose, out of your life, you have no life, you have no purpose. Nothing means anything. Once you get to the next pinnacle, it means nothing. And you're on this rat race hamster wheel trying to constantly build and build and build just to always feel empty. And when I experienced that, I was like, so when I had my son, I was like, I need to be better. I have to be a better human, a better adult. I don't know how. That was before all of the holistic healing and all of this stuff is going on mainstream. I didn't know where to start. I just knew that my anger was not going to suffice. And I was starting to see how that was actually affecting my son. And my son has always been like this joy, this ball of light, this, I don't know, being that just understood what was going on around him. And I was hyper aware of that. And I understood how sensitive he was as well. So, stumbling and making mistakes as a young parent, I'm saying young because I really feel like 21 is really young to have a kid. I had my son at 21. That's really, really young to me because there was so much I had going on and so little I had paid attention to myself and my own internal growth. And this is before I had the luxury of caring about femininity or caring about manifestation. I felt like I had to work 10 times as hard as anybody else to get away. That was the only thing that I cared about. Around the time I was fed up and I was ready to actually change my life, not just say I wanted to change my life and do things in a surface way, was when my son was maybe 3 or 4. I started to get into yoga and meditation. Well, I tried to meditate, it was not working at first. I could not sit with myself, and I realized that that was a telling sign that something was wrong without anybody ever telling me or me reading or seeing anything. I just understood that if I can't sit with myself and I'm always using friends or situations or food or whatever to distract me, then something is not right within me. I just never felt fully aligned and centered and relaxed. I started that journey and he was with me, watching me, and he wanted to do everything I wanted to do. And that also gave me more insight of, okay, he's watching everything you're doing and he's picking up on everything you're doing. So you can't pretend to be a good person. You actually have to be a good person. I didn't want to have that facade that I was just this great human being, and really I wasn't. So going down a journey of healing set me in motion to, I guess, where I am now. But I also feel like my past, my darkness, also set me in motion to where I am now because it helped me reset. It helped me really question and think about what is worth living for. What is life about? It had me asking questions to myself that I'd never asked myself before because I was just living. But it really made me hone in on, am I doing anything worthwhile? Is life worth it? What is going on around me? Why are these people around me? And even though I didn't get those answers then, I have them now. as I attempted to get better for my son, as I attempted to be better for people around me, I think back then I was looking into getting a condo or buying a place, but I felt empty. I felt like even if I obtained the house, the car, the clothes, the vibe, everything that I wanted, there was something in me that was still untouched and empty. That prompted me to like really sit with God and say, I don't know what I'm doing and I don't know why I feel like this. And I described to God how I felt. I said I felt like I was in a box that was filling up with water and I could finally touch the ceiling and I can't get out, but the box feels small. And I feel like there's this world outside of this little box that I'm in and I can't get out. And the only way I know to get out is through you. Help me. I'm willing and I'm ready to live my purpose. I'm ready to find out who I am and who I'm supposed to be. And I'm going to listen to you and follow you no matter what that path looks like. That shook me to my core. That made me so terrified for some reason. I don't know why, but by that time, I'd already learned that the vibration of fear is a very low vibration. So I wanted to bring myself back up. And I was like, even if I'm scared, I'm not going to be hard headed anymore. I'm going to let you work through me. I'm going to follow. I'm going to step in any direction you want me to step in, even if it looks like fire, even if it looks like it's off of a cliff, even if it looks like I'm not going to be able to come back from it. I'm going to go in that direction. And that spiraled into a lot of knowledge and wisdom. And again, I'm a curious spirit and I want to know the answer. I want to know the truth. I want to understand what's happening not only in my existence and my reality. I also want to know what's going on in other people's existence and reality as well. So I started to hyper focus on myself. I did a lot of journaling. I did a lot of cord cutting. I did a lot of things to help myself rid everything from my past that I could. I did a lot of meditation, sleep meditations, did a lot of purging. I changed my eating habits. I started working out and taking my physical health very seriously. I was just on this path. And I think that when I went celibate is when everything pretty much settled and took off because I realized that I was allowing people in an intimate setting with me that didn't deserve to be there. And not to say that they were bad people. I don't think that any of the people that I've really experienced were truly bad. I think that they played their part and they played it very well. I do want to shout everybody out because if it wasn't for you being who you were, and even in the moment, if you were an asshole to me, I wouldn't be where I am now. I wouldn't be as strong as I am now. I wouldn't know the person that I am today because I wouldn't have had the opportunity to meet her if it weren't for you. So, really gaining an understanding of self and gaining an understanding of other people and how people are reflections and projecting, and there's pieces of you in them and pieces of them in you, and reasoning for your past and why you had to go through what you had to go through. I think that everything that I went through has prepared me for now. I don't see myself as a victim anymore, even though I know I went through things that were painful and sad and depressing. I'm just glad that I made it through. I'm glad that in the state of being born in darkness, I didn't turn out to be the villain. And I very much could have been the villain. I still can be the villain. I have that capacity in me and I understand that and I'm aware of that. And I honor that version of me as well because that part of me is what happens when you don't have full understanding of yourself and of the world. So now that I do, even though I might still read you the filth, I might still pop off, I might still fight, like don't get it twisted. I'm healed, baby, but don't push me. Don't try me. Don't piss me off. Don't piss me off. I'm still about it. Like don't let Chi Town pop up out of me or whatever because it's not nice. But for the most part, my go-to thing is to assess the situation and see what's best for the situation and understand that I have a very colorful personality, a very colorful being, and I've disconnected from ego, I've disconnected from self, I've reconnected, I've refound, I've added, I've dismissed, I've gone through so many different versions of self, and then you keep going through that in every cycle, right? And I think that letting go and saying to God, I'm going to let you tell me which way is the best way for me. Instead of me saying, oh, yeah, I want to be a lawyer and I want to have a penthouse crib with a red drop top and a purse dog. That was really what I wanted. I didn't want to be a lawyer, but I wanted something that was going to bring me the bag, something prestigious, something respectable. Having a life where I now have a son and I'm building a family, I realized that the life that I wanted was also empty. It didn't harbor what I needed. And the life that I have is what has transformed me. Giving in and submitting to God, trusting God is what helped me tap into my feminine energy. And I've said that before, but I will always say it again. I realized that my femininity is attached to everything and my masculinity is attached to everything. And if you really want to get deep into the psychology of everything, it's just left side, right side of the brain. One is very creative and one is very structural, and being able to marry the two and be balanced, that's when you really strive. You strive. Knowing when to work, knowing when to rest, knowing when to go with the flow, knowing when to be structured. I had to go through that. I had to go through being with my mom, who was very go with the flow, and going with my dad, who was very structured. And even though it crushed me, I appreciate that crushing because I really did come out as the phoenix. I figured out a lot in life. My son is also the main reason why I'm able to love the way I do. I didn't have I have a baby, I'm so in love with this baby. I was actually going through postpartum depression. I've been depressed so many times. Even recently, I was depressed like in October of last year, September, October, November. Those months, I was depressed. In that moment, I couldn't understand why I was depressed because everything was kind of just going as it should for the most part. There was nothing really going on, but I just felt down. I felt unaccomplished. And again, it put me in a place of questioning myself. Why am I going this route? Is this worth it? Do I need to just go and be in corporate America again and just give up on everything that I'm doing? Should I just go and live this life? And it made me stop and look back in my mind's eye, and there was nothing behind me. And it was basically like God was telling me there is no going back. There is no turning back. Remember? You said that if I send you in a direction, you're going to go in that direction. It doesn't matter what the analytics say. It doesn't matter what people around you say. It doesn't matter what you see other people doing. They're on their path and I'm putting you on yours and you can't see it. I can. And I was like, okay, Spirit, like you don't have to keep you don't have to keep telling me. You know what I mean? But I was going through a whole new metamorphosis. It just is what it is. Sometimes you just need to stop and say, what am I doing? And why am I doing it? You need a reminder sometimes. I think that having that relationship with God and taking so much expectations off of people, everyone around me, like even with my parents, I was expecting them to be something that they didn't have the capacity to be. And even though it is their responsibility to heal, it is their responsibility to show up in the world better than they were the day before. I can't expect that. I can't solidify my existence in that and saying, you have to show up for me this way. I have to find another way. And that is when I started to realize that a lot of my uncomfortable experiences rested in resistance. I didn't want to let go of how I saw people. I didn't want to let go. Once I let go, that's when I realized that I will receive what I want. I'll receive what I deserve. If I put out the right energy, I will be rewarded. My wisdom has been life and really living life and being hyper aware of self and others and the world, the state of the world, but also knowing how to come back to self and be grounded, not allowing those things to take me off on a tangent, not being stuck, understanding that it's time to get up and move and following my spirit and following those inklings and always being curious. You'll always find wisdom if you are ready to be curious and ready to be honest with yourself. And I've always been very honest, brutally honest sometimes. My son definitely put me on a different path of this journey that I never thought that I would see. And I realized that every relationship with every person is actually an opportunity for soul evolution and soul growth. And when I started removing the person's title, when I started removing the expectations that I was laying on people, that's when I realized that this is all an obstacle course. This is all opportunities to heal and meet new versions of yourself. I've never been the same person with anybody I've ever dated. Every single person has gotten a different version of me. I could have been chaotic, but it was a different chaotic for everybody. I definitely have experienced different versions of myself. And now that I have one son, I have a stepson. So I experience a different version of myself with him as well. I'm engaged to my fiance. I experience a different version of myself with him. And I also get to watch everyone around me and see how they experience their existence and from their perspective and what the tools that God has given them to lead their life. And sometimes I watch them and I'm like, oh, they're starting to get it. Just listening, I don't feel like I have to impede on their experience and teach them in certain situations. A lot of situations I do say something, but most times I'm like, oh, they're getting it. Look at you. And giving that praise and giving those flowers and doing that for myself as well. Understanding that everything has a certain type of value system and it all completely depends on your perspective of life and the world. So while some people may think that listening to, I don't know, Meg the Stallion may be low vibrational, for me, it gives me energy, it fuels me, it makes me feel even more confident when I'm in the gym. I know when to apply certain things in my life to get the outcome that I need. Music has definitely been something where I've gotten a lot of knowledge and wisdom from, and feeling connected to someone and something and someone else's experiences, and understanding that I'm not alone, whether I have people around me or not. I'm not alone, and people are free to live their life however they want. And also releasing manipulation, releasing trying to find a way to control and force people into doing things that they don't want to do. I think that that was one of my biggest wise lessons, that even if I think that it's good for someone, they still have to embark on their journey. They have to experience their journey. I can't give them the answer. Even if I did give them the answer, it won't digest the way I'm intending it to. So I hope this helps. I don't even know. I don't even know where I took this message or this video. I don't know if I got what I wanted to say across. I know that I tried to prepare as well as I could, but this is a really free flowing video. I'll just say this, that no matter how hard it is, no matter how deep it gets, no matter how dark it gets, for some reason, that's when you have the most transformation. When you get to the point where you're forced to ask yourself, why? Why am I doing this? Why is this worth it? Why is life worth it? And you start to decommission a lot of the things that are holding you hostage in an old paradigm. That's when you will have a lot of breakthroughs if you allow yourself to make it through. If you can disconnect from the fact that people are doing what they're doing, which is really challenging. I understand. Trust me. At the same time, if you can find it within yourself to disconnect and say, you know what are the cards on the table? What is life trying to show me right now? What am I allowing? What's going on? Why am I going through this? And having those deep reflective thoughts and ideas, and just being incredibly understanding and willing to understand yourself and your situations and the people around you. Just like I said, my parents said really hurtful things to me while I was in the hospital, and I understood that they were scared. I didn't have to be a parent to understand that. And I think that if my son said something like that or told me that he no longer wanted to live, I think that that would break my heart. And because I had the capacity to heal, because I had that capacity to understand and question and seek understanding, I think that I'll definitely show up in a different way. And hopefully, however I decide to show up when people really need me is exactly what they need in the moment. I almost made it through without crying. Ooh. The tear hasn't dropped yet. Let it dry. Anyway, that's my time. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. I hope to see you guys soon. Definitely hit the like and subscribe. Leave some notes down below. I read you all's comments. I'm not in the point where I'm overwhelmed with comments too much yet, but I definitely love when you guys share your story with me. So definitely feel free to do so. You are safe to be vulnerable here. I will see you guys later. Peace, love, and a little bit of spice. Mwah.